Assalamu alaikum. I'm Idris Mears from Book Quarter at Al Sakal Cultural Foundation. I've started making podcasts with interesting guests that are passing by in our bookshop in Dubai. These podcasts are being released on our YouTube channel, Book Quarter. Please look at them and subscribe to the channel. And as always, the heart finds the heart. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Idris Mears from Book Quarter at Al Sakal Cultural Foundation. I have with me my guest, Haji Fazlun M Khalid, who's released his masterwork. I have to call it a masterwork because it's the result of 40 years of solid work and application. It's called Islam, Modernity and Climate Change, and the Climate Crisis.
Signs on the Earth.
And the actual Signs on the Earth. I mean, I think about the subtitle, because the subtitle in a way is the substance of the book.
Yes.
And really you've laid out the theoretical basis for people to approach the matter of the environment from a Quranic perspective.
Theoretical, theological, practical. Actually, the main title of the book is Signs on the Earth.
Signs on the Earth, yes,
Yeah.
Which is a Quranic.
Yeah, that's taken from Surah 51, 21 and 22. وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ.
Okay.
There are signs on the earth for people with conviction, and in yourselves as well. Do you not see?
Yeah. So the title itself indicates that this climate crisis is a product of what you've called modernity.
Yes, or almost. Yes, it is, without a doubt. And the way we've been carrying on.
So it wasn't created by the traditional Muslim world.
No, the traditional Muslim world was, in a sense, sidelined. And the traditional Muslim world, in a way, I think, rather subconsciously subscribe to this whole ethos of modernity. They don't have a. I'm not sure, but I can say that. Do they have a critique on it? Do they have a critique?
Because it wasn't created from the Muslim world, therefore they're not connected to its roots, to the process by which this process of modernity arose,
Yeah.
and therefore they've been a victim of it rather than a creator of it, and that often that doesn't lead you to a full understanding.
Yes, if they realize that, in common with the other traditions, one of the things, using the jargon that's relevant in this kind of field that I'm working in, people talk about the loss of biodiversity. People are worried that Allah's creation, He created so many beings that come from different ecosystems and they have their different lives in their own climate and their own region. The one statistic that came out a couple of weeks ago was that the entire insect biomass will disappear before the end of this century. Now, if people really don't understand that we are all dependent creatures, we are dependent on the insects and in the unseen, and one of them is the bees.
And the behaviors of the different communities, the insect community, the animal community, are all interlinked.
Absolutely.
And that actually they have a natural harmony. So man's natural kind of behavior is also part of that harmonious balance of
harmonious fitra system.
Fitra system. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Which is something that we don't really. We have lost that consciousness of connectedness.
Yeah. So one of the issues for the Muslim world is fitra. They've actually dissociated themselves from that understanding. I always give the example that if you think about the deen is like a seed, and the seed is complete in itself. Everything for the potential of the plant is in it, but it must be planted into a soil, and in terms of the Quranic terminology, the soil which the seed of Islam is planted into is the millet al-fitra, the natural system that was actually for the modern being established by Sayyidina Ibrahim, and Islam is Deen al-Fitra.
Yes, I wouldn't quite use the word disassociated, because it wasn't a conscious act. Muslims didn't say, I'm going to disassociate myself from the fitra. They have, through a kind of a historical process in the past 500 years particularly, that the Muslims have been diverted from the course of the fitra. That's the word. I think that comes more comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit.
More diverted from the fitra. فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليه.
So I think
لا تبديل خلق الله ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. That is a profound verse. فطرة الله التي. The best translation I found of that فطر الناس عليه is the Abari translation, where he says, Allah originated you in His original creation.
Okay.
Juxtaposition of the fitra and the fatr.
The father, because yes.
Yeah. Allah said after that, ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ, you will not change my creation. So we have been attempting, in the modernist world, we have been attempting to change creation. We have changed creation. And in the process of changing creation, we have then taken on the role of nature itself. Modern society, modern academics, not Muslim academics, say that we are now a force of nature. And they even have a name for it, which is the Anthropocene, if you understand.
But I would say we could take that analogy further and say, well, actually, if we've stepped outside of the natural zone, or the zone of the natural, then the zone of the natural will eject us. So maybe the present kind of hurtling that human society has to self-destruction is nature rejecting us, and that in a way that we only have our safety by replacing ourselves back into the zone of the natural.
We are
in danger.
We are in danger. We have been functioning in a way that is anti-nature. One way of putting it would be that Allah's creation is cyclical. Night and day, the sun and the moon, the seasons, everything you look at it, the births, the deaths, the growth, all these things are cyclical. But the current modernist economic and social paradigm is linear.
It's on a continual progress. It has to be.
Continually improve and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. But the earth hasn't grown. Nature, we have the cyclical nature of trees growing and bearing fruit and dying, but it's not the linear process. We are in a very artificial process. No matter where we place ourselves, whether it's in Dubai or Sri Lanka or UK or the North Pole or the South Pole, it is this very same globalized process that is driving us.
And those processes are industrial, and they're linked to certain kind of ways of production.
Yeah.
And for those production processes, there's a finite amount of resources.
Absolutely.
And we're using more than those finite.
Yes. I mean, some academics argue resources are not finite in the sense that, but once after having said that, they say resources may not be finite, but the ecological processes that extract these resources are destructive. But I disagree with the first proposition that resources are finite, and people are worrying about the loss of biodiversity as a result of the trees being cut. I started off by making a statement about biodiversity, making a statement about the nature of biodiversity, how biodiversity, the millions of animal forms, sentient forms, right from those in the earth and those flying up there, millions, are now in danger of being extinct. But one thing that has not been taken into consideration, which has brought us here, is in fact the profound loss of cultural diversity. And we have lost that. And taking a wider look at existence, and there have been myriads of cultures and traditional communities and indigenous communities, we call them, who are rooted in nature, an entire life cycle is related to the life cycle of nature. They don't know. They don't
because we live in natural communities. I mean, there's a famous ayat of the Quran saying Allah has created you male and female and put you into tribes and groups in order that you have mutual recognition or mutual joining together. But the citizen of the global world has become a unitary citizen who doesn't have a tie to the people around him, but a tie to this abstract concept or the processes of the state. So people no longer have natural communities. They have communities that they create of choice. They say, I belong to the lesbian, gay, whatever it is community. I belong to the community of the environmentalists. But they're not natural communities.
Yeah, the point I was making was that the loss of cultural diversity has destroyed a myriad perceptions of how to live in harmony with nature. So when modernity got in the way, it destroyed not only the communities physically, but the remnants of it were destroyed from their connection with the natural world. And then they became sucked into the global economic, social changes that were being implemented by the hegemonic, so imperialistic cultures that have been ruling the world for the past 500 years.
So would you say the behavior patterns, or largely the behavior patterns of the traditional societies, were environmental? That people naturally were kind of enhancing.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm
saying.
saying.
And that in some ways, you can't say Islamic environmentalism, because Islam is a way of behavior.
Islam is the environment.
And then that way of behavior is totally.
Yeah.
So
it can be expressed. It can be expressed quite simply, very simply. I say there's no such thing as Islamic environmentalism. Then the question is, then how will Muslims respond to the current so-called environmental crisis? And I would say, Amr bil Ma'ruf wal Nahy anil Munkar. Establishing good and forbid the wrong. That is the basis of Islamic governance and Islamic behavior. The whole aspect of futuwa. It is how you behave with your brother and your sister and your neighbor and your family and your community, and how you behave with creatures in nature, your response to the natural world. You will have to behave well in your relationship with everything that Allah has created. That is Islamic environmentalism.
So there's, we're going back to your the title of your book, or the subtitle, when you talk about Islam, modernity, and the climate crisis.
Yes.
We've talked about the climate crisis, and it's there in our face. We've talked a little bit about modernity, and now we're talking about Islam. But when we say Islam, it's not an idea, it's a way that you live, it's a way of behaving.
Yes.
And what I've noticed myself is that when I talk about that seed, that Islam is like a seed that has to be planted into the soil of the fitra, it is actually planted into the soil of the dominant world system, the globalized system, which we could call milital kufr, because the famous hadith of the Prophet that kufr is one system, and the present day system is not about affirming Allah's creation and the existence of Allah. It's about a man affirming himself and using the creation for his own benefit. That when you plant that seed into the soil of the fitra, then you start to use the processes, and then you put the adjective Islamic in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So Islamic banking, Islamic education, Islamic this, actually they're not Islamic. They're putting a kind of a coating, putting a kind of a package around it, and saying, this is it. But actually, it's just the same thing as every other. So banking is banking, and banking itself is one of these things which is against the nature.
Yes, of course.
Because all banking, whether it's Islamic bank, in the end depends on fractional currency creation. It depends on the kind of usurious transactions, however you might describe them.
I've been thinking about, now that we are in this situation, how we could extricate ourselves from what leading edge thinkers call the end game, or Armageddon, or the end of civilization. It's all over, our house is on fire. These descriptive terms are now academics, and not the ordinary people, not the fanatics, thinking academics, researchers saying this is the end game. So if this is the end game, which is being described not by Muslims. Muslims are nowhere near this kind of. We're in a morass. Let's face it, we're in a morass. We think we can get the best out of this system and go and I call this the 5 principles Islam, and I'm saying this is not enough. 5 principles Islam is not enough. You have to take the whole of the deen of fitra and look at it today.
Though within those 5 principles, you do have the principle of the zakat, which implies.
You have.
So there are implications from.
Yeah. But the thing is, we have to think anew about how we can, working from the paradigm of Islam, which is submission to the will of Allah, and then give some fresh thinking, and it is there. And in my research, I've discovered that not only is the Quran full of verses that reflect on the environment, like La yuhibbul musrifin, Allah does not love the wasters, like Akhbar min khalqin nas, everything Allah has created is bigger than you, or La yuhibbul musrifin, or وَكَانَ اللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ مُحِيطًا. Allah encompasses everything, is muhit, you see. And there are these profound verses in the Quran. And nearly every page you turn in the Quran, there is a reference to the birds and the bees, or the spiders, or the sun, the moon, the stars. It's all there. Islam is not only that. Scholars over the centuries have codified a legal system which now been rediscovered by the Indonesian scholars who I work very closely with, and they've called it fiqh al-biyah. So there is a whole body of Islamic natural resources management. Now, why aren't people looking at that?
I think it's not only about environmental resources, but I think also the social patterning, because I think along with the Islamic Bank, which is a complete cul-de-sac, absolutely has no chance of reforming the corruption of the existing financial system, you have the idea of the Islamic State. Whereas what the modern state has done has destroyed all the natural communities and linkage between people and behaviors, and replaced and made everybody these kind of individual citizens that only relate to this, really in the end, to this central ideology, so that the state becomes a kind of pseudo-religion, whether people realize it or not. That the behavioral processes of Islam will also be part of the cure. So I was thinking that this is something which has come to me sort of almost very recently, that one of the main social processes that enabled the Muslim community to emerge at its beginning was that the people who saw the need for Islam to reform the human situation, the first people to see it were the elite in society and the people who had nothing. So the early Meccan community of the Prophet, and then that went to Medina as well, was from the two ends of society. But there was this relationship which we call wala. There was the ties of, and so rather than looking for the cure for environmentalism or for the financial collapse through these governmental processes, through all these sort of abstract bureaucratic processes, actually in the end it could only really happen by individual behavioral change. So in a sense, the human beings in the situation at the moment is that the people who have the wealth and the resources, the empowered people have to directly contact and work with the poor in society in a direct relationship, not through government and NGOs and things like that. That what the Prophet called hub al-masakin, and the love of the poor people, and that if you look at all the dua that the Prophet spoke about, the advice that he gave to people, it's a recurring theme that maybe people have forgot, but it's there once you begin to look at it. And I think that in a way we're sitting in a country where there are a lot of people who have empowerment, who could enable all kinds of things to happen, yet in a way what they're kind of being presented to them as ways to benefit and to be philanthropic have become all institutionalized. I mean, I've noticed this myself quite a lot. I'm maybe talking too much, but you know, I was involved with an organization called the Association of Muslim Schools, and I would come here to raise funds to you know, to help that network of Muslim schools, and I had relationship with people, but they were largely people from the older generation who understood, right, I'm going to help this. You know, so there was a personal help based on trust. That has almost disappeared. Those people have disappeared from the Emirati society, and everybody's now saying, oh no, we have a kind of, you know, we send all our money to the Beit al-Zakat. They've instituted all these abstract kind of processes, and so you get these, whether it's governmental or pseudo-governmental NGOs have put themselves in place of the natural human behavior, and then the other aspect of that kind of natural way that you know, the two ends of society were joined together and brought forth beneficial social processes was the waqaf, awqaf, you know, that the wealthy people would establish sources of income that would be diverted to social good. But of course it's become the Ministry of Awqaf, so that process has been taken out of the hands of direct human relations.
Yeah, in the same way that the old Islamic national management systems have been overpowered and defeated by modernity and modern development.
Like
and
the Himma, you know, there was this principle of the land that was set aside for the common good. Is there anywhere where that exists still within the Muslim world?
In very corrupted forms. I attended a conference in Kuwait, set up by the Kuwait Research Institute about 5 years ago, and they were trying to bring the old systems back into play. But regrettably, the Hema system, particularly in the Arabian Peninsula, had been converted into real estate, and modernity has really taken over the psyche. All these good people you talk about, this is fine. I don't know. In a way, I'm too old to be polite. I mean, I have to say, we have to wake up because it's too late. We can talk this very nice language, and I wish people would wake up. We can. I'm a doer. I want to make things happen. I want to make things change, and there is no time because the next generation are going to suffer. We can talk theoretically, even theologically. I have to say, if you want to change now, or forget it. You know, that's my message. If you want to carry on the way that you're carrying on, just carry on, send your children to London, New York, get your children educated, let them be consumers, you know, and that's the end of the world. And that's the language I'm using. That's the language I used at the United Nations Forum in Nairobi last week, because people talk at one level and they're very insincere. And you get this young child from Norway or Sweden or somewhere who's very upfront about environmental change, and she's creating she's even been nominated for the Nobel Prize. I said, salute her, very good. But people then should tell her the truth about what is really going on. So what we are hooked into, what this whole system, whether we are Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, whatever, globally we are hooked into, is a lie. This system is a lie. It's built on a huge lie. And this is why these same people who are part of this system are saying this is all over. But they do not have a response. They do not have a solution. But I'm saying to the Muslims loud and clear, listen. Listen to the deen. Look at the behavior of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and try and emulate it. And you will find that you will gain a lot of reward out of it. But how are you going to extricate yourself from this system that you have locked into? Because it is not getting you anywhere. You know, it might bring you lots of money and lots of prestige and lots of people saying this is great and that is great, but it's not getting you anywhere. You see, and I also have a message for the jihadi. It's all over. No matter what you do, whether you're Taliban or Al Qaeda or Al Shabaab or Boko Haram, I say to them, bury your guns down, pick up a shovel, dig the ground, feed the people, not kill them. That's my message to them.
Yeah. So I would say like all these the interlocked system of the bank and the state, all these things that they're trying to put the Islamic adjective to, are just completely part of this system.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that system has created a human being who functions in a very sick way.
Yeah.
Actually, we're all the indications, the climate crisis, the social collapse are indications of a disease.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to describe that disease, it's really addiction, and it's addiction to consumerism. That's the kind of
I'll tell you what. I mean,
but it comes from a spiritual emptiness because you try to consume the world because your inwardness is out.
It has been a 500-year-old process. My aspect of globalization is that one of the three aspects of globalization is a whole campaign of massive global social engineering, and that has been done by the mission schools, which have ringed the earth, and the Christian secular ethic wasn't imparted on all of us. Now, why am I speaking English to you? Why is English now the universal language, or Spanish and all the European languages the universal language? It is that because we have been deculturalized, brainwashed by a process that has been globalized. But now, let me follow this thread. Now, the Christian mission schools, their main function was not only to convert people to Christianity, but also to train a local elite, a local administrative elite to run empire for the emperors. You see, now that is changing. So, what has taken over from this ring of Christian schools are a ring of business schools and university faculties, and there are foreign departments of all the major British and American universities ringed all over the school. So what has replaced the Christian mission schools are the business schools.
Yes,
so we all want to be successful businessmen and banking and carry on this untenable system ad infinitum. And the fact of the matter is, listen folks, listen brothers and sisters, you are not going to do it because it will collapse. And if you are and your children and your grandchildren are going to see an entirely and totally different world. And I'm saying to you, this is a warning that you have to change. And don't go down this road. You all want to be business school graduates, okay, go and do it. But it's not going to last you long. The whole thing will collapse because it's unreal. That's what I'm saying.
I think that's a very apt point to end the conversation, because what can we say after that? Thank you for putting it so bluntly. I hope people have been listening, and that we could all find our individual networks to help us to change because we have to admit we're all addicts from this global disease, the way that we live. So we have to, one, admit that we're addicts, and then we have to go into therapy. And part of therapy is you have the group therapy, and of course that is the Quranic principle, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Find the people your companionship that will be a mirror to you and help you to shift the way that you behave. And if this is done, it will accelerate, that it will become, it will be also like a disease, it will spread quickly. May Allah make that happen. Finishing from our talk, may the
Ameen.
may the heart find the heart. Assalamu alaikum.